What constitutes stopping digging? What do we do first?
First, I start by rejecting the question.
Okay.
We aren't going to stop digging in a complex, a growing and an increasingly complex society. The question is not about stopping digging. It's about where to dig, when to dig, and how to do it in a more wise fashion than we have been recently. And I'll get to another point on that in just a moment. But in one sense, our history in this respect isn't back to the 1950s, as great as that was. It goes back to the foundation of the Republic. Transportation goals, with perhaps one exception, I think are the same as they were then. National connectivity, how do we communicate and connect with one another? Economic growth, competitiveness, safety, national security, and now, of course, our environment. And the reason, I think one of the reasons that we're here is that these issues are very complex, and the challenges are many, and the challenges are often conflict with one another. In a sense, the first division is with whatever money we have, how do we divide it up among maintaining what we have, what we got in the 1950s and in that imagination? How much of it goes to building new facilities of the same type, road facilities for private vehicles? How much of it goes to alternatives such as mass transit systems? But I think, and I'll get to this part of it in a moment as well, I think that one of the reasons for our frustration has been our unwillingness or our inability to measure the effectiveness of what we're doing. When we have conflicting demands for a limited amount of money, how do we determine which are the highest priorities? And after we've spent the money, how do we measure whether or not we've spent it wisely so that we may spend it somewhat more wisely in the future? And the next one is, we can have the most wonderful plans in the world, but if we can't pay for them, they do us no good. Gasoline taxes, motor vehicle fuel taxes are declining in real terms. How are we going to finance our aspirations for the future from the point of view of transportation? The next challenge is transportation is 95% dependent on oil, on petroleum. 2/3 of which now comes from foreign sources, most of which are either unfriendly or unstable. What do we do? How do we meet the challenge of reducing our dependence both on foreign sources for oil, but because oil is still going to be around for a long time, how do we reduce this overwhelming dependence on oil? Electricity, ethanol, with all of the problems that we've seen recently in that connection. The most recent that has come to my mind is a group of people now who believe that they can create petroleum from algae. Is there a magic bullet somewhere in that connection? And of course, the challenge of the environment itself. That's the new challenge. How do we do all this without spoiling the environment that we have at the present time? I'm here more as a learner than a participant. I've been chosen one of 4 co-chairmen of a study by the Bipartisan Policy Center in Washington, D.C., which is truly that. Senators Dolan, Mitchell, Daschle, and Baker, in an attempt to come up with policies, hopefully for the next Congress, with a congressman here, that can appeal across the aisle, that first can meet these challenges, and second, can meet the political challenge of how do you bring the representatives of the American people together to actually do something, to actually move into the 21st century and to meet all these other challenges that are so important for us.
Thanks, Senator.